All right, shaping versus luring. All right, let's talk about it. I am going to bring up a slide. Oops, let me hide this one. Let me get this straightened out. There we go. All right. This is a topic we talked about. If you don't know, in my comprehensive programs, we do online classes twice a month where we talk about different things. And this is something that we just talked about. We had a really good and interesting discussion about it, and it just made me kind of wonder what everybody else is doing out there. First of all, you got to, before you can answer what is shaping, what is luring, you got to make sure you understand the both of them. And I'm just going to give you I'm not going to give you the whole slideshow of it, but shaping is a training concept where we let the dog learn for itself, right? So we set up a really neutral environment, something they're really used to. It might be your living room without anything exciting in it. We decide what our criteria is going to be. By that, I mean, what are we trying to teach the dog? Is it sit? Then we're going to wait, and we're going to wait for the dog to sit on its own. If it's going to be to pick up something, we might have that one object out there in the room, and we might wait for them to touch it with their mouth. And as soon as they do, we mark it. If you don't know what markers are, check us out on another episode. I think we've done an episode on what markers are, but we're going to mark it, which is our way of telling the dog, yes, that's what I want. And then we're going to really just wait it out and wait for them to investigate and wait for them to self-discover. Shaping takes a fairly good amount of skills. So it's not easy to do, but once you learn it and you develop those skills, it can be pretty fast also, but it does take time. It does take time. I'm not going to lie. It takes time. When you are shaping, what's really cool about shaping is it really gets set into the dog. Hang on a second here. It gets really set into the dog in a way that we can't learn things. Whenever we self-discover things, don't you guys find that for yourselves? Whenever you self-discover, whenever you have your aha moments and you're like, oh, I get it. Like I could tell you and tell you and tell you and tell you. And that's maybe the sort of the equivalent of luring. But when you suddenly go out and you make your mistake and then you're like, oh, I get it, right? That's sort of like shaping. Like that's that aha moment. And when your dog has that aha moment, it's golden, right? It's golden. It's what we need. It's like what we need to see from the dog. So the key to shaping is making sure that you're very, very clear on what it is you're trying to teach the dog. You have to have a fairly distraction-free environment, and you have to have a lot of patience because you literally have to wait it out and you have to wait for the dog to discover it. There's pros and cons, in my opinion, to doing both shaping or luring. So I want to kind of talk about pros and cons of shaping here. When a dog self-discovers, we know one of the good things, I just said it, they deeply understand that behavior. They get it. They really do get it. It does create a dog who pushes you for engagement versus you pushing them for engagement. So I tell all my clients, we shape engagement. And engagement, again, we've done topics on engagement, but it's really, really important to me that we shape engagement, that we create dogs that are pushing us to work for them, especially if we have clients who want dog sports and want the dogs to do things for you. If you show the dog everything, then the dog is going to learn to follow and see everything, but they're not going to learn to push to do things for themselves. So dog sports, working dogs like search and rescue dogs, need a lot of shaping, and also service dogs. We need them to know how to shape because it's really, really important for them to understand that they have to get up and do a task on their own without direction. So we need that, and it's a really, really good part of shaping. Okay. It also creates you being a better trainer. I think that's one of the best things about shaping. And I think you guys mostly know I do run a prison program, and I run one and I work for another. And we regularly, as in a lot, like every time I'm there and I have the guys doing it in between, we teach new trainers shaping, even though we do more luring, and we'll talk about luring, and we'll go through that. But even though we do more luring in the prison, we teaching the guys how to shape makes them better trainers. It makes them more precise in their understanding of criteria and cues and what they need to be doing to teach their dog. So we do a little bit of shaping. We do shape engagement. Even in the prison, we shape engagement. Okay. The cons. It can take a long time. That's one of the bad things. I think as you get better at it, it does and can potentially go faster, for sure. But it can take a while, especially when you're first learning. And it also can be difficult to adjust to arousal levels changing. And what I mean by that is, this is where I find, for me, the biggest con is in shaped stuff is versus lured stuff, is that you have to be super methodical. And I like to be methodical for my lured dogs also, but you have to be super methodical when you deal with arousal. So for instance, my dog can learn it really well at home, but then suddenly I'm in the middle of a really busy park and my dog is like, I'm not even thinking about that. And since we're waiting for the dog to think about it, it's a problem. So we have to be really thoughtful about really increasing arousal by small amounts for the dog to learn to work under arousal when we're shaping. It can also be problematic for luring, but luring we do have some tools more on board to help us with that. And one of the drawbacks too is if you have a passive learner, it can be really difficult. But I guess for you to understand that, you have to make sure you understand what is a passive learner. This is something we talk about a lot in my curriculum, is what is an active learner and who is a passive learner. An active learner, a good example of active learners are typically puppies, baby puppies. Before we've done a whole lot with them, they tend to explore the world. They try things. Some dogs genetically, though, are active learners and might remain that way. And other dogs genetically might be passive learners. Passive learners are dogs who are wonderful dogs. They're like, hey, if you show me what you want me to do, I'll do it. But they don't try things for themselves. So part of shaping means the dog has to try to do things. And if you have a dog who generally looks at you and is like, you show me the way and I'll go, that's an awesome dog, but it's not well suited for the concept of shaping. And I think that's something people get wrapped up in. I like this methodology, or I like this methodology. But at the end of the day, we need to look at the dog and figure out what is the dog's methodology and how does the dog learn? And we need to honor the dog that's in front of us, and we need to train a little bit that way. I want to talk a little bit. I don't think I have a slide for it. I'll use a slide for us. I want to talk a little bit about luring. We've talked about the pros of shaping. That's all there on the left-hand side. Why I like luring and why I do a lot. And by the way, I like shaping. So when I say I like luring, it doesn't mean I don't like shaping, or it doesn't mean I like luring better. In my business, when I'm doing a board and train dog, I have to do luring. I really do not have the time to sit and hope that a dog will figure something out. Like especially if they're a passive learner. A lot of my board and trains are passive learners. But I do have some active learners. But I'm on a time schedule. People want their dog back, and I understand that. So I have to make things go fairly quickly. So I have to make things happen. I can't just sit back and wait. So for my board and trains, I do a ton of luring. For the prison programs, we do a ton of luring. Same thing. We've got to make things progress, and we got to get the dogs into new homes, into new handlers. But one of the things about luring and good luring, and this people get stuck up on luring because one of the downsides of luring is if you stay on the food too long luring, it becomes a crutch, right? So the trick is in luring is if you get really good at it, you're off the food very quickly, so you don't have that problem. So luring can be much quicker and it can be systematic. And that's really why I use it, because I have to move dogs between me and a home, or between the prison program and the two or three trainers in the prison, to me on outings, to a client eventually who's going to get the dog. So I have a whole lot of people involved, and shaping is about the trainer and how good they are at it. But I can't teach a new handler that quickly. I just can't. And so I need to use luring because it's something I can make systematic, and I can teach, and I can have the same dog have less confusion by teaching the people how to do the luring and stuff. And I know how to avoid the pitfalls of luring, because there are pitfalls. One of the pitfalls being the luring can create a dog who's very dependent on you to show them everything. And it might be fine for if you have a dog that you want to be a wonderful pet. That might be just fine. Like the dog's going to hang out and lay there and wait for you to say, hey, let's go do this, buddy. And let's go do this. If we have a working dog, whether it be a service dog, a search and rescue dog, or maybe it's a dog in our dog sports. We want to do nose work, scent work, tracking, all those scent sports. We need to be able to shape, and we need a little bit more of an independent dog. And the same thing, if you have a working dog, just a little bit more, if you have a working dog that needs what we call intelligent disobedience, then that's the ability for the dog to understand sort of the rank, if you will, of behavior. So a service dog is a really good example, although I also did this much with my search and rescue dogs. They had the same issue. You give the dog an obedience cue, down. Let's just say down. We have them down and we're at a restaurant and I'm a diabetic and my blood sugar starts dropping. I don't know why it would drop when I'm eating, but let's just say it starts dropping. I've given the dog a cue down. From an obedience perspective, that dog should stay down. But from a medical alert perspective, if my insulin levels drop to a certain point, my dog needs to ignore that obedience cue and interrupt me and let me know and alert to me. And that's really, really, really important. And so it's really important that you have a dog that understands, well, it's not okay to just get up and go wander around the restaurant. It is absolutely okay to get up and do a higher level task for their handler, right? So when you need to have, that's what we call intelligent disobedience, that there's times that it's okay for the dog to be disobedient for the higher purpose of their work. So when you do that, if you only ever depend on luring and the dog following, they're not going to learn how to make good choices. So we need some shape things in there. And I think I already told you, like any of our scent stuff, we're going to be doing more shaping. I think I'm going to do a whole lecture on that, maybe over the winter sometime. So I want to know what you guys do. If you see this later, drop it in your comments, what you guys do. Do you guys prefer shaping? Do you guys prefer luring? I will tell you, I talked about what I do for client dogs. And also I teach in my programs far more luring than I teach shaping, but I will teach shaping to people that need to know shaping. And we certainly do shaping. We do shaping in things like barn hunt, whether you realize it or not. Nose work, we do shaping there. But in my obedience programs, so that we can be systematic, we typically teach and focus more on luring, although we do shape higher level tasks in our service work. If we were doing scent sports, we'd shape higher level tasks. For my own personal dogs, I do both. I'm not gonna lie, I do both. I think they both have pros and cons. I tend to be more of a lurer, but I will tell you this. I was having this conversation with some people years ago that were very anti-luring, and they were all about shaping, and shaping's the only way, and blah, 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 blah. And we're training dogs together, and I did a couple of things, and I literally put food in my hand. That's the definition of luring, right? I'm putting food in my hand, and I'm putting my hand to the dog's nose, and I'm manipulating the dog, and the dog is following my food in my hand. But within about 2 reps, the dog understood, because we had done this a couple of times before, and I had no food in my hand. And by the next day, I had no food in my hand at all. And they're like, oh, you're shaping. And I'm like, no, I'm actually the very definition of luring. I had food in my hand. But the difference is between me and a lot of people when they lure is I only have food in my hand for just a very few reps. And then I move away from it very, very quickly so that I don't create that dependency. But the trick is learning how to move away from it. And that is really the essence of what we teach in our programs. So really, really important to be cognizant. Do you use shaping? Do you use luring? It's fine to have a preference for one or the other, but at the end of the day, you have to work with the dog in front of you, and you have to work with them. And I'll give you an example on that. Most of you know my dog Junior. I'm bringing him up for competition. And when I first got him, I realized I had some problems. Like one, he liked to play keep away with the ball. But the other thing is, so when he plays keep away, I don't have much engagement. And he was a very introverted or closed dog, right? I got him at a very closed. I think it's genetically that way. And nobody had taught him anything, skills as a puppy. So he never learned this concept of active learning. He didn't have it genetically, and it wasn't not enforced, but it wasn't reinforced in him early. And so when I first got him, I was like, okay, let's go do obedience. I got a new dog. He's super ball motivated. This is super cool. He's marginally food motivated. And literally, he would just look at me. And he really wasn't into the food. And I'm like, ugh, what am I going to do here? If I keep trying to do obedience, I'm going to have a very closed off dog. And in my sport, I need flashy obedience. And so how do I get an active dog when I have a passive dog? So that's the other part of this conversation that I didn't really hit on, is that if we're really skilled, we can take a passive learner and create an active learner from them. So I shaped engagement. And that means I hoarded a pile of toys, and he came and he kept pawing at me and nudging me and pushing me because he wanted one of the toys. He wanted all of the toys. And I wanted a dog who could learn to express himself and open up. And so when they open up and barking, then they tend to open up and become a little more active. So knowing that I wanted that, I waited, and I finally got a small vocalization, and I tossed him a ball. And he ran off with it. And I waited like 30, 40 minutes, I don't know. And then he realized I had a whole bunch more balls. And he laid down and he was watching me. And he finally came over and he did the same thing for a second one. And then I threw it at him. And again and again. And we did this where I'd sit for a pile of balls. He'd eventually bark and get one bark. He'd get a ball, and he'd go through all 6 or 8 balls that I had. And then I would take him. He would have all the balls. And then I would go to his pile, and he'd grab one and run away. That's fine. And I would sit down and I'd gather all the balls up. So I could have been talking about compulsion or different things to do obedience, but I'm literally sitting on the field with a lot of balls waiting for my dog to come bark at me. And over time, he figured out the game, and he got pushy about it. And he would start coming. Once I got one bark real solid, then he would bark twice. And then I would go for 3 barks and 4 barks. And sometimes I do it in 2, and sometimes I do it at 4. If you train with me, you know I'm always preaching to be random. You need to be random in your training. You reward, even if a dog can do 10 barks, sometimes you reward at 2, and sometimes you go all the way to 10, but you don't always train at max. So over time, he became very pushy. And suddenly people that see him, they think, oh, he's he's active. I'm like, actually, he's a passive learner. And I have to do a lot of luring, but because I shaped that engagement, because I took enough time I took like 6 months, you guys, 6 months before I did any obedience with them, because I just really needed to make sure that I had everything I needed from him. And so he's very active and very pushy, and he gives me that flashy obedience that I'm looking for. So that's what I mean when I say it's really important to understand the concepts, and then it's important to understand the dog in front of you and apply those concepts to get what you ultimately need. Okay. All right, you guys, do you have questions? Oh, hey, Carrie. Let me see here. Wait a minute. I definitely do both, but sometimes we have accidental shaping in addition to planned shaping. I struggle moving away from food when luring. Yeah. Okay. So accidental shaping happens, right? I mean, you want to talk about accidental shaping. I got a story on accidental shaping. Oh, dear God. Bricks, if y'all remember Bricks, who was our company dog for a long time, when he was a baby, about a year old, he was very expressive with his face. And I was sitting on the bed, like leaning against the headboard, watching TV, I don't know, reading a book, doing something. I was just sitting there, and I had popcorn. I think I was just watching TV, and I had popcorn, and he came and he dropped his head and he rolled his eyes up, and he looked super cute, right? It's that eye roll up, super cute expression. And I said to him, yes, and popped him a piece of popcorn. Oh my God. Think about what you're doing before you do it. He thought that was cool. So he did it again. And I marked it and I paid him. And I marked it and I paid him. And the next thing I knew, all through Thanksgiving and Christmas, he ran around all the family who thought it was super cute and kept paying it. And then I tried to teach him heeling, where I needed his head up. And I was going through the Michael Ello School at the time. And we were, even though in heeling, we were at a level where we were using the ball because I was learning fundamentals, we were using food. And he kept trying to drop his head and roll his eyes at me while I'm heeling. And Michael couldn't figure it out. It took, really, we went a week. It was a 2-week course. We went through a solid week. And I finally said to him, hey, do you think this could be the impact? And he started laughing so hard. He's like, yeah, of course. So accidental shaping can certainly happen. Dogs can learn very fast. And I said, once they learn it deeply. To my dog's last days, he did that behavior. even though I never marked it after that night with the popcorn. 3 times I marked it and done. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. And Carrie, you also said the other part of that was you struggle with moving away from food when luring. It's an art form. It's an art form. It's exactly, I think I'm going to be doing a webinar that is going to include that type of stuff. So keep your eye out for that. That's a problem a lot of people have for sure, because there isn't a lot of clarity. And it's honestly one of the things that I've been doing for years and years and years and years. And I have people come to me from other trainers and they'll be like, why didn't anybody ever tell me this? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe people didn't know. I don't know. But because I compete, I think that's sort of where I'm forced to learn some things. So yeah, hiding, it just glanced up at the screen. Being able to move away from food is super important. The longer you use food, the harder a way it's going to become. And I don't mean use food as a reward, because I used food for a long, long time. But the longer you have the piece of food in your hand that you're trying to create the behavior with, the harder it's going to be to get away from it. I'll give you an example. On my board and trains, they come in, they take 2 or 3 days to settle in usually, depending on the dogs. I mean, when I get young dogs, they're pretty adaptable, but older dogs maybe take a couple, 3 days to really start following my hand in luring. Once they're following my hand in luring consistently, I'm off food within 72 hours for the behaviors that I've taught. I'm still giving them food for doing the work, but I don't have food in my hand anymore. I've gone through my little process. So it's really, really important that you can, that you can get away from that food as quickly as you can. And I haven't seen you train, so I don't know exactly what your struggle is, but for sure that's one of the most important pieces about implementing good luring techniques. And I am working, it'll be sometime this winter, I am working on just a shortened version, because we have pretty long comprehensive programs, but I'm working on a couple of different webinar topics that I think are really important. And that's one of them, clarity and communication and how we get there. In fact, that's our topic tonight. We're not really talking about the food part tonight, but we're talking about part of what will eventually be my webinar. We're talking about that in tonight's class. All right, you guys, tell me, what do you guys like? Do you lure? Do you shape? Do you do both? When do you do what? Is your dog a passive learner? Is your dog an active learner? Drop a note in the comments. Let me know. And again, don't forget, we have IGP Nationals in Gilroy next weekend. It's not often that it's on the West Coast, you guys. It hasn't been here for like 5 years. It usually comes maybe every 3 years or so. So if you've ever thought about seeing IGP, you need to go down Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Wednesday and Thursday, they'll be practicing. So if you happen to be down there on those days, you can certainly take a look over at the practice field. But Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are in the morning, starting at 8. And I don't know, I'm the trial secretary. I'm supposed to know these things, but I don't know. I'm guessing we're going to be done by 2 or 3 each day, maybe 3, maybe 4. I haven't seen the schedule yet. But, you know, feel free to drop us a line. We'll all know. And yeah, and I'll try to keep you guys up to date. You can go to GermanShepherdDog.com and you can find the schedules and stuff there. And we hope to see you there. And last but not least, don't forget our Halloween contests. We have been posting on Facebook about them. We're doing this a little different. I'm not sure how well this is going to work. We may have to go back to the old style format, but you can post on your wall. You just hashtag which contest you're entering: Gold Country Canine Trick or Treat or Gold Country Canine Costume. And you can win a gift certificate. So enter. We're looking forward to those contests. We're looking forward to seeing all the dogs. You can see all the details. You can see all the details in our Gold Country stuff. And see, you do both. Yeah, depending on the dog, right? Good job. That's what you want to do. You want to look at the dog and be like, what does this dog need from me so that I can, one, better enhance who this dog is and not make conflict with the dog, and 2, that I can get to the goals that I have that I want to achieve. Okay. All right, you guys, I will see you guys later. I've got to go get ready for our class now, and I will see you guys. I will not see you next week. I am trying to get back to regular Wednesday live streams. However, next week I will be down at IGP Nationals. And I don't want to count on trying to live stream from down there. I might pop on for a quick minute and show you what's going on, but I don't want to have a planned thing because I don't know what the schedule is going to be. And I look forward to seeing everybody there. All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.